Resumes and Cover Letters webinar in preparation for Career Day 2026. Yay! Very exciting over here in the Career Development Center. My name is Chantal. I'm the manager of Career Services within the Career Development Center. And in the back end, we have Tatiani, who's our Career Services Officer. So she's helping me out with everything technical. Before we get started, just a couple little housekeeping bits. If you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. And if you do have a question that you're putting in the chat, if you could just preface it with a capital Q so that we know that that particular comment is in fact a question. And then I will get to that at the end. Of course, you will have the option, if you prefer not to type it in the chat, you will have the option, if you'd like, to keep your turn your camera on and your mic. But of course, you don't have to have your camera on. This webinar will be recorded. It's going to be uploaded along with our other webinars on the CBC YouTube channel. So if you do miss it, or if you love it that much and you want to rewatch it, you can find it there. And speaking of questions at the end, stay until the end, because if you do stay until the end, you will get your name put in for a prize, which we'll be drawing kind of all together with all the Career Day prizes later on in March. And there is a survey, a very brief survey that I would be very thankful if you completed. This is again at the end of the webinar today. I have a QR code that you can scan. Very quick question. Honestly, I'm going to say it's going to take you less than 30 seconds to answer. And it really does help us out, because that does help us improve our services for you. So all of this, of course, is in preparation to Career Day 2026. But I did want to start off with a territorial acknowledgement. We at Kwantlen Polytechnic University respectfully acknowledge that we live, work, and study in a region that overlaps with the unceded traditional and ancestral First Nations territories of the Musqueam, Katzie, Semiahmoo, Tsawwassen, Hittite, and Coquitlam, and with the lands of the Kwantlen First Nation, which gifted its name to this university. In the cause of reconciliation, we recognize our commitment to address and reduce ongoing systemic colonialism, oppression, and racism that Indigenous peoples continue to experience. So a reminder to the folks on the call today that might not really be familiar with some of our services. So this webinar, as well as Career Day, is brought to you by the Career Development Center. The Career Development Center is made up of career services, volunteer services, cooperative education, I'm sure you heard of that one, and employer relations. And you can certainly scan the QR code and visit us online at our main website. And then please do follow us on social media. We will often post, information about upcoming events here at KPU. And of course, we share other KPU departments' information on there as well. So please do follow us on social media. Now, this is the first one of 3 webinars that we're going to be hosting this week in preparation for next week's Career Day 2026. And so today's resume and cover letters. Tomorrow is Navigating Career Day. So some tips and tricks on how to stand out. It's going to be busy, right? So just how can we stand out and make our mark when we go to any career fair, not just Career Day. And then on Thursday, we're going to wrap things up with job interviews, always the same place, same time, online, 12 to 1 p.m. to make it as easy as possible for you to attend. And this is, of course, in preparation and leading up to Career Day 2026. So that is going to be happening on Tuesday, March the 10th on the Richmond campus, and Wednesday, March 11th on the Surrey campus in the Spruce building. And it's both days from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. Okay, so what are you all here for? Well, the goal of today is to ensure that we all understand the importance of customizing resumes, ways. We'll get some tips on how to gain clarity, the difference between tasks and skills on a resume. So I go into that in quite a bit of detail. Also, we're going to hop over to cover letters, learn how to write a personalized one and how important they really are in your application process. And then overall, it's really just to increase that confidence for you in your overall application capabilities and get you ready for career day. So here's what we're going to be covering. In terms of resumes, things that we want to include on a resume and maybe things that we don't need to, just unnecessary items that we have on a resume. We're going to be going through the profile sections of a resume as well. I'll be spending a little bit of time on the skills summary section. If you don't know what that is, that's okay. That's exactly what I'm going to be covering. The importance of promoting and highlighting our skills on our resume over tasks. I'll explain what I mean by that. And customizing the content. So building that bridge, that connection between your resume and the job posting. And then, of course, we got to make it look good. So visual presentation, structure, tense consistency, and so forth. So that'll kind of wrap up resumes. The thing with the resume content is that I really have put this together based on what I see from students when they submit their resume for review or when we are reviewing resumes together. But I also put this together based on industry and what recruiters and hiring managers and human resources professionals tend to look for on a resume. Then we're going to hop over to cover letters. We'll start off with the overall structure of a cover letter and kind of hooking them early with something, a really strong opening line in that first opening paragraph. Should you even bother with a cover letter? And I do hear that a lot of questions. Well, I've heard that hiring managers or recruiters don't read cover letters. What's the point? The edit rule, the 80-20 edit rule. I'll talk a little bit about that. And I'll be, remiss if I don't bring up ChatGPT or AI when it comes to writing a cover letter. And then we're going to wrap up with the survey. Like I said, I'm going to put a QR code up at the end of the webinar today, and hopefully you'll stick around for about an additional 30 seconds to fill in that survey for us. It'll be really helpful. And also, of course, if you do stay until the end, that's when you get your name put in for the draw to win a $20 Tim Hortons gift card. So, hey, that's not too bad. That's like maybe a breakfast and 2 lunches. And then we're going to, of course, wrap it up with some questions. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat, preface it with a capital Q so that I know that your question is there. But again, at the end of today's webinar, if you prefer to just unmute yourself and ask your question that way, please do, whatever works for you. Okay, so let's just dive straight into it. Resume tips. So is it really necessary, right? So I know that this is a tough question. What should I include on my resume and what should I not include on it? Well, the important thing to know is that, of course, everything that's on your resume should be true, but not everything should be on your resume, right? But it's not, that's easier said than done. What do we determine is important and what is not important? So let's start with the personal details. Oftentimes I do see a lot of very personal information on people's resumes, and including your address, your home address. Your actual home address does not need to be on your resume. Just the city and the province is completely fine, but you do not have to have your actual home address on there. Your full legal name actually doesn't even need to be on there. If you have a preferred name that you prefer to go by, then use that on your resume. You don't have to have that plus your legal name on your resume. You could simply go by your preferred name and then your last name on your resume, and that's fine. Of course, once you get hired and you're filling in all those tax forms and so forth, you need to use your legal name. The other thing with personal details, things like I've seen passport numbers on a resume. I've also seen relationship status. So those types of things you do not need to include on your resume. Your high school. You really don't need to include your high school on your resume anymore, like where you graduated from. For the most part, now that you're at university, that is sufficient. Now, of course, like many things on a resume, it does depend. So if you find that you're relatively new out of high school, you don't really have very much work experience, you did a lot of volunteering and so forth at your high school, then it kind of makes sense in that situation to maybe keep your high school on there so that you can really promote how active you were as a student. But for the most part, if you've graduated high school and you're at KPU, then it's not necessary to also include that you graduated high school. Too many detailed tasks on a resume. So under your actual job description or volunteer description, you have a whole bunch of bullets that are really just a list of tasks. Like when I think of tasks on a resume, I think, you know, things that you were expected to do, that was part of your role. So if you were a cashier, serving customers, operating the cash register, restocking, I would kind of go, well, you're kind of telling me what we already know cashier does. So that's really just a task list, and that really doesn't promote you as well as you could be promoting yourself. So we're going to get into that in a little more detail. And then other education or other jobs. Now, for the most part, you know, the audience today on the call, you're not going to have a whole, you know, big history of jobs. And so it's very likely that the jobs that you have done will very likely stay on your resume. But in some cases, you might be able to remove jobs that maybe were pretty brief. You weren't there very long. You know, chances are if you were just there for a month and it didn't work out, it's probably best that you remove that from your resume anyway. Other education apart from high school. So if before coming to KPU, you completed a diploma or a certificate in something that's completely unrelated, you could probably get away with removing that. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that the employer, the prospective employer, sees that we are genuinely interested in their role. So if this is a new direction for you, and you're still promoting the fact that you had this completely irrelevant training from the past, it might send a message to an employer that you could potentially go back to that, you know, original training that you had. So it's probably best to remove it. But again, if you're never sure, it's always good to reach out to a career coach and we can kind of work that out with you. Okay, so question for you. So feel free to please put your answer in the chat. I have Tatiani on the call who's going to be managing the chat for me around this question. True or false? Write your answer in the chat there. You should have an objective on your resume so the employer knows which job you're applying for. True or false? Looking for some true or falses in the chat.
We start seeing some answers here. The majority thinks that's true. And we have two false, another true here. I would say from here is like the answer is 80% true and 20% false.
Okay, excellent, thank you. The answer is technically false. It's a bit of a trick question. It's a bit of a trick question because really what an objective, and when I say an objective, I'm talking specifically about an objective. And an objective simply states, this is what I'm looking for, right? To obtain a full-time customer service position or to obtain the full-time accounting position. An objective tells the employer what you want. That's it. That is what an objective does. So maybe try a summary statement. So a summary statement briefly summarizes, it's in there in the title, for the employer, what it is you have to offer in relation to that particular role. I'm going to get into this in a little bit more detail. So historically speaking, an objective was simply, this is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. So you're telling the employer what you want. Whereas a summary explains to the employer what you have to offer, while I guess through default telling them, so this is the kind of work I'm looking for. Let's dive into that a little bit more. So a skill summary or a professional profile, like there's a number of titles for this, a highlight section, a skills summary, however you want to call it. That is kind of the first section on your resume, and it's a pretty important piece of the resume. So what it does initially is it introduces the reader to your resume. Okay, this is what I have. Now you are coming, whether you have a ton of work experience or not, you're coming with a lot of skills, right? And so it's up to you to demonstrate for the employer which skills you have that are relevant for them. So the summary section helps you do that. So it introduces the reader to your resume and it summarizes your abilities that are directly related to the position. It's typically a mix of hard and soft skills, right? A little bit more like hard skills or skills that are specific to a job, that are needed for a specific job. Soft skills are those transferable skills, things a little bit more around your personality and the type of employee you might be. Now you can have it in the format of a short paragraph, 3 to 4 lines maybe, or you might have, you know, between 4 to 6, 4 to 7 points that highlight your most relevant skill set and experience to the reader. I often refer to this section as a mini resume or the VIP section. Only the good stuff should go there. But the mini resume, in that it is kind of a mini resume, what you choose to put in that summary section, it will be supported by proof from the rest of the document. So kind of like a mini resume of what they're about to read. The goal of the summary or the profile section is to say, listen, I'm qualified. I have what you need. Read on about me. Now here's an example of a brief summary. And this is the one that this one is like a short paragraph form. So for Career Day, we kind of err a little bit more on the professional side when it comes to resumes. But here's an example of a profile or a summary. So a bilingual health sciences student with practical experience engaging children and youth in day camp and academic environments, confident and enthusiastically presenting scientific principles and learning outcomes to students and parents, academic project work and experience co-leading groups of up to 10 youth has led to well-developed collaborative and organizational skills. So what you see here is I'm not simply listing that I have strong organizational skills, I'm collaborative, I'm proving it with that statement. And then I have a little relevant software capabilities. All of this profile was governed by the job posting and its responsibilities. Okay, so there's an example of introducing the reader, summarizing what they're about to read, right, with the resume, introducing that to the reader that is specific to them and their needs. All right. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about the summary in a bit. The next up is how we describe our work experience on our resume. So how we describe our work experience or our volunteer experience. And again, most of the time, not most of the time, but a lot of the time, I might see more task lists, right? So these are things that I was expected to do, and this is what I did. And that's how it's kind of described on a resume. And so the goal here is to make it relevant to the reader. So if we are only relying on our tasks when we're describing what we did or what we do in our previous work or current work or volunteer experience, we're missing a lot of our audience's needs, because the tasks of one job does not necessarily translate to the job that you're looking for. So it's our goal then to build that connection between the job posting and our skills, right? And so what we do then is we take a look at the job posting, read through the responsibilities. Most job postings will have that, right? They'll have the responsibilities section listed in the job posting. Identify, well, what are the key skills that one might need in order to achieve some of these responsibilities? And then what we want to do, and we'll go back to this slide here, is we want to then take our task, pull out the skill that's required to do that task, and then demonstrate it to the reader that way. Don't worry, I'm going to give you some examples here, but hopefully you're following along okay. So our goal is to take our experience and our skills and connect it to the job responsibilities. So that's what our resume's job is. It's to highlight our relevant skills and experience in relation to the job characteristics for the employer. We need to tell the employer how we're the match. Let's take a look at a few examples. So this is a really busy slide, but there's 3 examples on this slide that I wanted to cover with you. So these are called accomplishment sentences. So on the resume, when you're describing what you did or what you do in your current or previous job or volunteer role, oftentimes I just see a task list. So what we want to do is we want to convert those using skills into accomplishment sentences. So let's take a look at 3 examples. So the first one here is a tour guide, maybe for orientation here at KPU. And your primary task is to give tours, provide information, and so forth. So that's what you did, and that's what I might see in someone's on someone's resume. It's more about how you did that job, right? How you performed those tasks. So guided informative campus tours for up to 500 prospective students, with surveys indicating the presentation positively impacted their choice. Now what you're doing is you're taking your task and you're converting it into skills. So with that statement, with that accomplishment sentence or statement, you are highlighting these skills: enthusiasm, presentation, confidence, communication, probably so many more. Let's take a look at the second one. The second one, you work in, you're a cashier maybe. So your tasks are you handle cash transactions, you serve customers, you stock inventory. Okay, so it's not so much the task, it's how did you complete those tasks, right? What are you like as an employee? That's really what you're demonstrating with these sentences. Confidently process an average of 80 to 100 customer service transactions daily while ensuring stocks were replenished and area kept clean. Okay, so the tasks have now been translated to skills. Those skills are that you can work under pressure, good at multitasking, you're confident, and you deliver strong customer or client service. All right, the third one, you wrote some code, you worked with some people, right? Okay, so let's see how we can convert that to a skills-based accomplishment sentence. Collaborated with a team to develop C++ code, integrating individual components, managing version control, and resolving bugs to deliver a working solution on schedule. So now you've converted your tasks to skills, and you're telling the employer that through this role, you've demonstrated collaboration, technical ability, process discipline, problem solving, and time management. So we're moving away from tasks and moving towards skills. You'll notice that each of these accomplishment sentences contain 3 components: power word or a verb, right? And in some cases, I add an adverb in there, confidently processed. So the verb being processed, confidently is the adverb. So the power word plus the details, like what you did, and then the value created. And oftentimes, that's just a matter of explaining the how or the why you did something. If you describe it and then include the how or the why, you then turn that into, quite successfully, I'm sure, a really great accomplishment sentence that focuses more on your skills and less on the tasks. Tasks describe activity, skills describe value. Remember, if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat, preface it with a Q. We'll save those till the end. Of course, if you want, you can always ask that question by turning your mic on as well, whatever works for you. All right, visual presentations. We got to make it look good, of course, right? So I'm going to break these down. I'm going to go into each one of these individually, but overall, for the next few slides, we're going to cover using the rule of thirds when it comes to formatting your resume. Font style and consistency are key. Consistency being with the font, so the same font, and the same style throughout, but also with the tense, so past or present tense. We'll cover the length of a resume and really how long it should be. Quantify, so going back to those accomplishment sentences that we were just discussing, quantifying wherever possible, so kind of inserting numbers in wherever you can. How to save your resume so that it's a professional file name. Oftentimes the recruiter does see the name of the file when you submit your application, and the importance of getting another set of eyes to review that application for you. All right, so the rule of thirds is really thinking about your resume in 3 sections. And the first section is that top third. That's crucial. So that's the part that has your contact information, which is why we want to leave out anything that is not relevant and that is too personal, because their eyes will naturally go to the top of the resume. The next section is that really important summary section that I kind of started today's webinar off with. So that summary section that introduces the reader to your resume and tells them right away within the first 6 seconds or so, hey, listen, I'm qualified. Continue reading on about me. The middle third actually proves what you said. So whatever you wrote in the summary section up at the top, or the highlight section, or whatever you want to call it, it now needs to be proven with the content with it, that's sprinkled throughout your resume. So that middle third is the content that proves that first third, right? Which is why it's also important when you're talking, when you're including your summary section up at the top, you don't need to include details like, if you're telling us that you are a second-year health sciences student, you don't have to write at KPU. That stuff can be proven down below under your education section. So you really only want to include enough information to entice them to want to read on. And then the bottom third is kind of a combination of the less relevant or maybe even slightly less interesting information about you. It might be some older work experience. It could even be an interest section. And I do think interest sections are great on a resume if you have space, but I do think that you can make your interest sections more interesting. So less just simply, writing that you enjoy reading and so forth, and maybe expand on that a little bit. Like, where have you traveled to? Where are some bucket list locations for you? So just expand on that a little bit. If you put that you enjoy reading, that's great. What's your favorite novel or favorite genre for reading? So consider making that interest section more interesting. Okay, so let's start with font size and consistency. So making sure, because when they open up your resume, you want to manipulate their eye to information. And if there's too many font styles throughout the document, their eyes won't know where to go. They're going to be overwhelmed and they might lose interest. If they don't get what they need quickly, they won't necessarily spend much more time on the document. So keeping things nice and clean is key. So one font style throughout. Keep your headers the exact same font style and size throughout, and keep the formatting consistent throughout. So here's an example of keeping 2 sections exactly the same in terms of formatting. So we have work history and education, and I've decided to write those headings in all caps and bolded. That's it. And that's probably the only time I would do all caps on a resume, other than maybe my name. The job title is bolded. It's the first thing to the left. Next up is the company name, which could go below it. And then the date, which I would recommend so that you have a nice balance of black to white ratio on your resume. Maybe tab your date further to the right of the page. The education section, in place of the job title, we have the program title. So what I'm doing here is we're putting more emphasis on the job title, more emphasis on the program title, less emphasis on the company, less emphasis on the school name. Font style, it's really up to you. You got your serif fonts and then your sans serif fonts. So sans serif fonts are like Calibri and Arial, and then the serif fonts are the Cambria and Times New Roman. So those are the ones that have little sticks on them. If you look at the T for Times New Roman, there's a little stick on there. So that's a little bit more, I would say, traditional font. Cambria and Times New Roman, it's kind of like a newspaper font style. Calibri is my own personal favorite, but you know, as long as you're consistent with it, you can kind of choose one that's as long as it's nice and clean and easy to read. Just make sure you're using the same font throughout, as opposed to Calibri in some places and Times New Roman in another place. All right, resume length. So this one, I mean, here's the thing with resumes. We know it's not a science, you know, and for the science majors out there, I'm sorry, but it's not a science. You know, some employers like it this way, some employers like it that way. But for the most part, we do know that keeping things relevant, promoting those skills that are most relevant to the employer, keeping it nice and clean, it's key. That will translate well to most recruiters, most employers out there. Resume length, that can vary, but typically as a student, 1 page is probably all you need. I'd say 2 pages maximum if you're coming, you know, with a bit of a working history. But for the most part, I'd say between 1 to 2 pages. I wouldn't go beyond 2 pages. It is rare to go beyond 2 pages, even after 15 plus years of work experience. You could probably tell them what they need to know in 2 pages. Some employers are okay with beyond 2 pages, but for a student, it's not likely you would need that while still keeping things relevant. Ideally, I'd say 1 page. So standard, you know, within North America, Canada, US, 1 to 2 pages. And we're not talking CVs, right? We're not talking about those long academic resumes that you need to submit for academic type roles, where they're looking for, you know, research information and so forth. We're talking resumes here. So between 1 to 2 pages maximum. In the UK, typically it's about 2 pages. Parts of Europe and Australia are quite a bit longer, 3 to 5 pages. And in India, it could be up to 3 pages. So yeah, so if we can keep it down 1 to 2 pages, even 1 page would be ideal, great. If you can't get it down to 1 page and you have it in your head, well, Chantal said, then you know what, it's probably okay. If you feel like everything is relevant and you're on to 2 pages, then it's probably okay. But of course, feel free to reach out, meet with a career coach, submit your resume for resume review, which I'll add the link to in a little bit. You know, if you really want to get some feedback and some suggestions on how to keep it down to 1 page. Next up, we want to quantify our information, right? So numbers really do stand out in a sea of letters, and they kind of act as proof of what you're telling them. So when I say quantify, I'm suggesting we do this in our accomplishment sentences. So when we're describing what we did or what we do in our work experience and a volunteer, wherever possible, try to quantify it. Estimates are usually okay, but sometimes, depending on the role, you might have some really specific data that you can include in there. And you can use the XYZ method, more or less. It's very similar to what I mentioned a few slides ago about how to write an accomplishment sentence, right? So you got your active and relevant verb, the details, and then the impact or the result of that. So here's an example of a sales associate. So this is not a task bulleted list of responsibilities that this sales associate, this is an accomplishment that the sales associate has achieved. So surpass monthly sales target by 20% through knowledgeable and personalized customer service, leading to a 15% increase in store loyalty program signups. So we see results, we see impact, and this the sales associate is quantifying. Now you might say to me, well, I don't really have that information now. That's okay. If there is a way for you to find this kind of information, do it. But that being said, when we begin to switch our focus from tasks to skills on a resume, that can potentially alter the way we work, because we become skills focused, because we think, how will this look on my resume? How can this turn into a really good interview story? So by switching the way we're thinking and promoting ourselves on our resume, it can actually impact the way you are as an employee, right? If you're always thinking skills development and growth potential. And I'm pretty sure that would go over pretty well with your current or future manager. All right, how we save it also matters, right? Sometimes this is the first thing they see. This might be the first thing they see about you is the name of the file you've sent them. So just make sure that it's very clear. It indicates your first and last name, the position that you're applying for, and what the document is. Chantal Rackley _ career coach _ resume. That's it. Okay, so let's just, here we have one kind of in practice. I've put an arrow towards my name. You'll see that that's the biggest, boldest thing on the resume. I would encourage you to do the same thing. You know, yell your name out proudly. Again, your preferred name is fine. Legally, my name is Marie Chantal Rackley, but I prefer to go by Chantal Rackley, and that's what I put on my resume and in all professional correspondence, really. You see, I just have my phone number there, my email, and then my LinkedIn, and that's it. I have the job title up at the top. I have my summary, and then down here at the bottom, you'll see I put some red arrows. These are tasks, right? So as a camp leader, you watch children or you work with a team of other camp leaders. Now I put a few different variations there. So one is watching children at summer camp. So we want to make sure that the form of the verb is simply develop or plan. We want to try to avoid any personal pronouns on a resume. So no I, my, or me. Imagine you're writing I, but then just remove it and the next word is going to be a verb, right? So I work. So this person might start with work with, probably change that to collaborate. And then I tutor children in chemistry. So instead, this person chose to write accomplishment sentences as opposed that demonstrate skills, that demonstrate impact, as opposed to simply a task list. All right, so we're going to wrap this up really quickly and hop over to cover letters. So understanding what they need or demonstrating what they need to know in the first 6 seconds of them reading your resume. You could do that with your summary, promoting skills and not tasks, customizing, build that bridge between your resume and what they're looking for. Make sure your font style and size and so forth is consistent. The tense of your verbs is correct. Make sure to format for clarity and readability. Quantify wherever possible to show impact. Make sure you have a professional file name. Use your preferred name and make sure to get it reviewed. So this is the QR code for the resume review service. You can also simply just Google KPU resume review and it'll very likely be the first link there. And that's where you can submit your resume and cover letter for review and receive feedback from a peer resume reviewer. Okay, we're going to go over this one relatively quickish. So cover letter tips overall, send one. Address it to a specific person wherever you can. I'm going to talk about these ones in more detail, of course. Connect yourself to the company and avoid repeating the resume because chances are they've already read it. Most recruiters will start with your resume. If you've identified that you're qualified for the role and you've piqued their interest, it's only at that point that they'll likely hop over to your cover letter. So they already know what's on your resume. They want to now know a little bit more about you, but we are going to talk about that in the next couple slides. So among companies who don't require applicants to submit a cover letter, 73% said that they frequently or always read the cover letter. So if it's optional, I definitely recommend that you write it. Most people will not. If it's optional, most people will not. So this is another way for you to stand out as a strong candidate. 83% of hiring managers reported that cover letters are important in their hiring decisions. Okay, so important. That also means, though, that it can actually be detrimental to your application if you're not writing a strong cover letter. So let's take a look at this. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we're addressing it correctly. Now, we might not necessarily have a name of somebody to address it to, but we want to make sure that we're addressing it to the appropriate reader, hiring manager, or human resources, or recruiter. So if we don't have a person's name, we might go dear hiring manager or dear human resources. If you are submitting it to any large public institution, they have human resources. So address them as a human resources, right? If it's a smaller company, they might not have human resources. It's probably a hiring manager. Either way, I would recommend just taking a shot, giving them a call if you can, and asking, hey, I'm applying for this role. Can you tell me who I should address my cover letter to? If you can't find that information accurately out by yourself, try calling them. You don't have to go into much detail. You don't have to take up much time. So I wouldn't necessarily call and introduce myself and, you know, ask any questions. I would simply say, hi there, I'm applying for this position. I'm wondering if you can tell me who I should address my cover letter to. They'll tell you, right? They'll either give you a name or they'll say, no, we're not providing that information. And then you could say, okay, is it human resources or hiring manager? And they'll probably at least tell you that, but they might tell you a name. Again, most people won't do this. And so if there anything that we can do to kind of step up our job seeker game and stand out from the competition, little things like this could make a big difference. So if you have the name, make sure that you're using the correct pronouns. Dear Ms. Singh. If you're not sure, then Dear Miriam Singh, just spell out the full name, and that's fine. All right, so let's break it down a little bit. Looking at the format, the typical format of a cover letter, you'll notice that this is pretty spread out. It looks like I have very narrow margins. I would stick with a moderate or a normal margin around the document. I just did this so you could see it really well. One thing you'll notice is that the header is the same as the resume, first and last name and city and your phone number, email, and LinkedIn. And then we have the date. So everything else is left aligned. We have the date, we have the employer's name and their email address, a job reference number, and then a proper intro. So dear Mr. Ms., if you know the pronoun, employer's last name. If not, you can use their full name or the position. Paragraph 1 is where you want to kind of hook them in, right? So start strong. Avoid standard openings. You know, I'm excited to apply for the human resources assistant position. Try starting off really strong. Something that's maybe a little bit different, but that's still authentic. So something like, as someone deeply committed to empowering youth, I look forward to bringing a combination of education and experience to the youth case manager position, whatever, right? And that's it. So really in that opening paragraph, you're going to hook them in, you're going to indicate what it is you're applying for and why. Paragraph 2, this is particularly important because what we tend to see, what I tend to see a lot are AI written cover letters a lot of the time. And what AI does is it'll simply kind of repeat your resume. It's pretty clear that that's what it is. And so you'll have to go through quite a few prompts in order to get an authentic voice coming through. So here you want to review the role responsibilities and discuss examples of skills that are comparable. At this point, you want to connect the dots for them. So you'll then describe, you'll take those key skills that you think are most relevant, maybe discuss how you plan on applying them into this role, right? So instead of writing, you know, through my experience at ABC Corporation, I did this and this and this, pull out what the key skills are that you will be using and that you gained from that experience, and then build that connection for the employer, and I help them see how you're going to apply those skills specifically with them. You can, in that second paragraph, if you want, you can merge like the hard skills and the soft skills. Again, the hard skills are skills that are specific to do a job, right? So it might be a specific software that you're going to discuss, or different, you know, technical skill. And then soft skill is more those interpersonal, you know, collaboration, communication, those types of things. So you can kind of merge those into that middle paragraph, or you can break that middle paragraph up into a hard skill paragraph, soft skill paragraph, and then that's making it a 4-paragraph cover letter. Paragraph 3, wrap it up. Assume you're going to get the meeting or the interview, right? Let them know that you look forward to discussing the role further, or discussing your contribution to the role further in an interview. And then sign off again. You put your phone number, your full name, of course, and then your phone number there at the bottom. You don't have to repeat it in that final paragraph. You can contact me at this or email me here. Simply write your phone number right below your name when you're signing off. Yes, they could see it at the top, but it's okay to add it into that signature as well. Okay, so oftentimes when we're writing our cover letter, even our resumes, it's important to first understand why. Why should we submit our cover letter? When we understand the why, it makes us putting together the content a little bit easier. So then we understand, okay, well, based on the fact that this is why they want the cover letter, I now know what I should be focusing on when I'm writing the cover letter. So, survey from 625 recruiters, pretty decent number, why they read cover letters. For one, to provide additional information and context as to why someone's applying for the role. Okay, so we kind of did that in the first paragraph. Number two, to show the applicant's personality. The resume doesn't really do that, right? So the cover letter is a good opportunity for you to do that, demonstrate your personality. Number three, to give applicants who don't meet many requirements a chance to pitch their qualifications. Ding, ding, ding. This one is particularly important, right? Build the why. How are you going to, like, why should they bring you in for the interview? Let them know how you plan on transferring your skills to them and what you plan to do. Let them know you understand this specific situation they might be in. Do a bit of research. That'll help you with this. And then number four, to check the applicant's communication skills. So that those writing skills are particularly important. 20% of your time, this is 20-80 rule, 20% of your time is going to be drafting it. 80% of your time is going to be editing it. Right? So think about that. Now, of course, I can't talk about cover letters without talking about AI or ChatGPT and all those other tools. But as we know by now, it's all in the prompts. But you still need to go back to this, right? You still need to understand the why. Like, why are they wanting to read your cover letter? Tell you it's not because they want you to repeat the resume. And that is oftentimes, I'm going to say very confidently, 90% of the time when I'm reading the cover letter, it's repeating the resume, which is really what AI tends to do unless you give it some really strong prompts, right? So here's an example of some prompts. I'm not going to go into this too much. I hope by now, I know by now, you all probably know how to use this stuff way better than I do. But it's in the prompts, but it's also in the human connection piece. So make sure that you are editing all AI generated content. Always, always, always giving it that authentic feel, that authentic air. 49% of hiring managers express that a strong cover letter can convince them to interview an otherwise weak candidate. So we're hearing so much about cover letters not being that important and people not reading cover letters, but there are a bulk of recruiters that still read them and want them. And in fact, it can push you out from the competition as a much stronger candidate. All right, so end of the day, when it comes to cover letters, send one, right? Do your research, understand the role a little bit. Try to, maybe look on LinkedIn, see who has held the role previously. This might gain you an idea for areas that you should be focusing on. Wherever possible, address it to a specific person. Right? Imagine, if you will, you're in that position, and I'm sure some of you will be soon, one day, where you're receiving applications and dear hire manager, whom it may concern, don't do that one, dear sir, madam. But dear hire manager, dear human resources, you get to, and then all of a sudden, boom, you see your name. That'll make you pause. You'll pause. You'll at least start reading that cover letter, right? Ensure that it has a clean format. Keep it professional looking. So typically, like I said, you keep the same header as your resume. So you keep that same brand consistent. But the rest of the letter, keep it all kind of left aligned. Include the date. Include the company information. If you include the company information up there at the top, you are sending a message, hey, I've written this for you. This is for you, right? With that company information up at the top. Connect yourself to the company. We've been over that already. And then please do not repeat your resume. AI does that. ChatGPT does that. It will simply go through your resume in a reverse chronological order. And that could be more detrimental to your application than anything. For those of you that don't know, we do have a resume and cover letter toolkit. It's on Career Connection. I know you all know about Career Connection because you're here. So in the resource section, if you click on that and in the resource library, you will find the toolkit for this, as well as networking toolkit, interview toolkit, and career exploration, as well as, of course, a whole bunch of other resources. But yeah, so that QR code there will take you to the resume and cover letter toolkit, where there's samples there for you to use as well. It's important to remember that your resume and cover letter won't always work until they do. So it's important to keep at it. Make sure you get another set or 2 or 3 of eyes on it to make sure that, you know, you're really promoting yourself as effectively as possible. And that brings us to the end of our webinar today. I did want to let everyone know that we do have prizes. So I mentioned this at the beginning. Hopefully you all stuck around till the end. And your name will get put into a draw to win a $20 Tim Hortons gift card. We're doing all the draws. We're combining them all together for including the Career Day draws for those prizes as well. And that will be on March 30th. But yeah. And leave it there for some questions. That QR code will take you to the the survey. Please do give us 30 seconds more in addition to the time you've already given us, but 30 seconds more to complete the survey. I'll find it very helpful. This is specific to today's webinar. So I'll leave this here for a second, but for now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to the chat to see if we have any questions. And like I said, you can either put your question in the chat box, or you can just go ahead and turn your, put your hand up, maybe just to see a few people, and then put your mic on and answer the question that way. Let me just have a look here. Okay, so from Tisha, I hope it's Tisha. If our work history is not relevant to the role we're applying for, should we still add it? Yeah, this is a really good question. You probably still will want to add it because you want to let the employer know that you are that you have history, that you've worked in the past. But it really just, unfortunately, it depends. So if your work history is irrelevant to the role that you're looking for, but the role that you're looking for is a little bit more entry level and they don't require any work history, then sure, you could remove it. But I would probably recommend that you leave it on and maybe just leave fewer details on there. So those bullets, when you're describing what you did in those previous roles, keep them pretty minimal. Maybe 1 bullet. In some cases, you might choose to not have any description bullet. You might just put the job title, the company, and the date. And this lets the employer know that you have been an employee. In fact, if you've been an employee for 1+ years at the same company, that tells them what you might be like as an employee. So the job itself might not be relevant, but you're still sending a message to the reader that you are, someone that can stick around for a little while. But you want to kind of weigh it. If you remove it entirely, are you removing all your work history? You do probably want to let the employer know that you have some work experience. But again, you might choose not to write as many details. Just the logistics, job title, company, and date, and maybe no bullet. But as we know, there's always a way for us to include a bullet that reflects a skill that is relevant for the employer. So you might think the job itself is not relevant, but the skill that you can promote through those 1 or 2 bullets, that could have a really great impact as well. So I know it's a little bit, it's one of these, well, it kind of depends, but hopefully that answered your question, Tisha or Tisha. Great, yes, and see the slide that speaks about the prompts. Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm going to look at the next question. Is work experience outside Canada relevant? Oh, hi, Belinda. Thank you so much for that question. Okay, so first I'm going to go, Catherine, I'm going to go back to that, to the prompts for you. There. Okay. Okay, and then Belinda, yes, please do put your work experience outside Canada, put your education outside Canada on your resume. It's the same thing. If it's not particularly relevant, you could remove it unless that leaves big glaring, red flags. But for the most part, it acts equally as Canadian work experience and Canadian education. So please do put that international experience on your resume. Absolutely. Zoe. Okay, so hi Zoe. If high school volunteer experience is relevant to the job, but it's been many years since you graduated, should you include it? Well, it will, if you put your high school, your volunteering while you were in high school, I'm guessing you mean at the high school. So rather than have that under your high school education section, you would have it maybe under a separate volunteer experience section. And you could put what the volunteer role was there. So under that specific volunteer heading. Now, if it was beyond 10 years, I probably would suggest you remove it. But if it's been, just a couple of years, then yeah, go ahead and put that on there. And make sure that if you're putting something you did in high school or anywhere else, make sure you give it an actual volunteer title. So just volunteer is not enough. Give it a descriptive title. So if you helped plan events as part of a committee, then your title under volunteer heading might be events planner, and then the dates, and then, which committee it was, and then comma, the high school name. And then, maybe a few bullets dedicated to what you did as an events planner. So hopefully that helped you out. Yeah. Zoe. And then I can see Ian typing something there. Oh, here we go. Okay, how would you explain time gaps in education or work experience? Like if I took a break, etc. Yeah, and so here's the thing too is employers are pretty forgiving when it comes to date gaps. It's becoming less and less of an issue. So a couple things that you could consider. If you were during a certain period of time not working at all and not in school at all, what were you doing? And are you okay to disclose that? For example, were you caring for a family member? Were you upgrading? Were you traveling? You could put a line in there that indicates what you were doing during that time. But for the most part, and you didn't give me a timeline, but for the most part, it's possible for people to have gaps of up to 2 years in a resume. But if there's a way to explain it, like I said, even if you were traveling or taking some, some short-term courses, even LinkedIn Learning things, list that and put the date that you were doing that. Caring for a family member, those types of things. Yeah. But don't go into over-explaining. It's just not necessary to do that. So, Ayan, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope that I was able to answer that for you. All right, perfect. All right, so I'm not seeing any other questions come up. If anyone has a question and they would like to ask it without writing it in the chat, I can see this time is right in my face. Then yeah, feel free to take your mic off mute and ask the question that way. But other than that, it looks to me like we're just about finished with resumes and cover letters. Hopefully you found this information helpful. I am going to go back just to, I think Tatiani did put the link to the survey in the chat. There we go. So I'm just going to put this up again. If I can take, a couple more minutes of your time, that would be great. And that's where I leave you. So again, thank you very much, everybody, for your time today. It was very appreciated, and I will hopefully see the both of you tomorrow for the navigating webinar. Same place, same time tomorrow online from 12 to 1. Thanks, everyone.